Well, hey guys, thanks for joining us online this evening. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a couple of announcements. If you have not already joined your group's Google Hangouts, so we're still having small groups, just having to move those things online. So if you have not already joined your group's Google Hangouts, that's where we can have a chat, where you can send each other pictures and stuff like that, or whatever. You can we'll have video chats once a week with your small groups. If you're not in that, make sure you get into that. So your parents should have links to those in your email, in their emails. Or if you want to link to your group, DM us on Instagram or on Facebook, or you can text me or something and let me know, and I will send you the link. So make sure you get to be a part of that. First, we're going to watch, I got a goofy video for you guys on how to cope with quarantine, and then we'll get into our lesson. But thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, it's me, Carl. These are my tips for staying sane while in quarantine. Tune a banjo. Take a nap. It's one of the best ways to kill some time. Boost your confidence by fishing for compliments from a friend.
What about me do you like?
Call your Mom.
No, Mom. Planet of the Apes is not based on a true story.
Make sure to keep good hygiene. Google image TJ Maxx, just for the fun of it. Read a book.
The rum is always gone.
Tell secrets to your dog.
I killed a man.
Think of a new idea, like turning on a lamp. Become a peanut butter monster.
I'm a peanut butter monster.
Get to know your houseplants better.
I once ate 3 dozen eggs in one sitting. I haven't been the same since.
Scream. Take a nap. Start collecting cow manure. Wow, what a stack. But then realize you're not supposed to be outside, so quickly run back inside. Self-reflect. Is this really me? How did I end up in this body? What even is a body? And how are we all in these bodies on this giant rock floating through infinite space of nothingness? A dark, vast, cold, eternal nothingness. And then you realize how hungry you are. Cook an egg. So yeah, that's pretty much the video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed all these tips for staying sane while in quarantine. It's obviously helping me, so I'm sure it'll help you. Seriously, I've never been better.
Sometimes I'm afraid of the dark. To be honest, I've never seen a baby pigeon. I think Power Rangers is actually a really good show, and it was before its time. I haven't paid my taxes in 10 years. To be honest, I don't even know what a tax is. At this point, I'm just too afraid to ask. Turtles actually freak me out. To be honest, I lost my toothbrush about a month ago.
What does all this stuff have to do with Easter? And if this holiday is about more than candy and wearing uncomfortable clothes to church and lunch with your relatives, what makes Easter happy?
All right, guys, so last week we wrapped up our series called Save the Date, where we're talking about dating and what God's Word tells us, some tips it has for dating, and specifically how we can start to prepare ourselves so we can have success in our future dating life. So if you did not catch those, you can go back and watch those on our YouTube channel or on IGTV over on our Instagram page. Just search @GPD Students and follow us if you don't already. You should be following us, so do that. So that was last week, and this week we're starting a new series called Happy Easter. So Easter is right around the corner. We're talking about Happy Easter, so we'll be looking at the different things that make Easter so important, the different things that make Easter such a big deal. So this is probably kind of weird, it's confession time, but one of my favorite things around Easter time is I love to look at the pictures and stuff online of really creepy Easter bunnies. Now there's a lot of them out there. Right, so the families or the kids will go and they'll take pictures with the Easter bunny. Man, some of these Easter bunny costumes are terrifying. I don't know who came up with some of them, and it's awesome to kind of look at those pictures of the kids. Usually they're screaming because this thing is terrifying, or sometimes the kid is just sitting there and they seem very at home with this terrifying bunny, which is probably even more creepy. But anyway, there's some really creepy ones, and as I was looking at those and thinking about that, I started thinking about this idea of fear, about how fear, man, is something that in these uncertain times that are going on in our world right now, fear is definitely something I think that is very present in all of our lives and in all of our households, right? Is fear. So fear can rob us of that happiness that is supposed to come with Easter, right? So Easter is supposed to be, we think this is a very happy, a very peaceful, very joyful time, but fear can start to rob us of that peace and that happiness. And we tend to think that as I get older, I just won't have as many fears, right? Fear will start to go away as I get older, but really that's not true. Your fear just starts to change. Now maybe you call it something different. You don't call it a fear. Maybe you call it anxiety or stress or something, but your fear is still there. It just starts to change. So let's think about that. Whenever you're younger, what are some things you're afraid of when you were younger? Let us know in the comments. One of the things that I was very afraid of, and this is silly, was I was always afraid of losing my stuff, like losing my toys and stuff. So I had this amazing book of Pokemon cards that I collected. Don't judge me for that I collected. And I was at my brother's football game one time, and I decided I'm just going to sit this book on the bleachers right here, and I'm going to go off, I don't know if I was going to the concession stand or something, going to the restroom, whatever. And I came back, and my cards were gone. Someone had taken them. So I was so upset by that from kind of that point on, for the next couple of years, really, I was like obsessed with keeping all my toys, all my stuff right close to me because I had a fear of losing that stuff. And then eventually I grew out of that. So then maybe next you grow out and your fear is now you're afraid of the dark. You start to have a fear of that. And as you get a little bit older, that kind of fades away. Well, now, as you're getting into middle school, you're starting to have maybe this fear of failing classes, this fear of not doing well enough in school. Or then you start to grow into, you have this now, you're starting to have this fear of being rejected by a boy or a girl that you like. Or maybe you are have this fear of being embarrassed online, or this fear about not getting into the college that you want to, or this fear, as you get even older, you start to think about things like health. You start to have a fear about your health, and maybe a fear about health of the loved ones that you have in your life. So you start to have all of these different fears, and as you grow, those fears don't go away, they just change and they go with you. So whatever your fears are, I want you to hear this. Whatever those fears are for you, most likely there's some big things that popped into your mind. Maybe it's one of the ones I listed, maybe it's just something completely different. But I want you to understand, I get that those fears are very real to you. That those fears are very real. They have a big impact on you. I don't want to ignore that as we continue this discussion. Don't think I'm ignoring that. I understand those fears are very real to you. But as we're talking about this, the problem is a lot of times, for many of us, those fears determine the direction of our lives. They start to determine the direction of our lives. And if we boil it all down, I think we can say there's one fear that kind of connects all those other fears, and that's the fear of death. Now, your response right now is probably like, whoa, Nathan, dude, you took that super deep. Start talking about death. But let's think about this for a second. When we're talking about the fear of death, we're not just talking about the fear of physical death. Now, that's a part of it, and that's part of something the Easter story does address. But we're also talking about just the fear of something coming to an end, something that we hold near and dear to our hearts that is going to come to an end. And that absolutely plays into our fears, and the fear of death. Those things are tied together. So maybe it's something like, maybe you're afraid of truly acting like yourself, because if you did, then people that you hang out with might not really like the real you. So you're afraid that your friendship would come to an end. Or maybe you're afraid of not getting into the college you want, because if maybe you had that letter, you don't want to open it yet, because if you don't get in, you feel like all your hopes and dreams you've been wanting your whole life will come to an end right there. Maybe you're afraid of someone finding out about this secret that you have in your life, because that would mean that other people's perfect image they have of you would be ruined. So see, our fears, really, when we kind of break it down, they are fears of something coming to an end. It's the fear of the death of something. So whenever our fears, whenever death, whenever it seems final, when we think it is final, then that can become too much to handle for us. That can feel like the final blow, become too much to handle. But that's when Easter comes in. Right in that time, whenever it feels like our fear is too much to handle, right in the middle of fear, Easter comes into the picture. So for those of us who are believers, for those of us who follow Christ, Easter is a time that we celebrate, right? It's a celebration time. So we celebrate how Jesus came to this earth. We celebrate how he lived the perfect life that we couldn't. and then he died the death that we deserved. He hung on the cross in our place, and then 3 days later, he rose again. And that's what we're celebrating on Easter, right? We're celebrating that. Now that's why Easter is such a big deal, because Easter changes everything, right? Easter changed everything. So it especially changed the life of Paul, who we're going to see tonight in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. You can go ahead and turn there if you're following along in your Bibles. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. So before coming to know Jesus, most of you know this, Paul was someone who he used that fear of death. He used that to try and pull people away from Jesus. And then he came to know Christ, and it completely changed everything. He became one of the greatest missionaries of all time. He was shipwrecked, he was imprisoned, he was threatened, he got bitten by a poisonous snake at some point. But even in the midst of all of that, he kept serving God because he knows, or because he was so passionate about the resurrection of Jesus. He was so passionate that people would understand the significance of Jesus' resurrection. Then in 1 Corinthians, Paul's writing this, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, 54 and 55, he says this: "Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting?" So Paul is reminding the Corinthian church and us that death lost to Jesus on Easter. That's what he's reminding them. Death lost to Jesus on Easter. When Jesus rose again, death had lost to Jesus. So when Jesus died, when he rose again, he defeated death. And that means that because of the resurrection, death can no longer defeat us as followers of Jesus. Death can no longer defeat us because of the resurrection. So the power that death has, or the thing about fear, the power that stuff has over our relationships, over our reputation, over our future hopes and dreams, and even over our physical bodies, that's gone, right? The power that death and fear has over those things is gone, because that's what Jesus did for us on Easter. That's what he did for us by dying on the cross and raising again. So let's think about this, right? Let's think about it. After Jesus' death on the cross and his burial in the tomb, man, it seemed like one of humanity's biggest fear, death, it seems like it had won. Right? But Jesus walking out of that tomb alive proved that the power of Jesus is greater than the power of death. The power of Jesus is greater than the power of death. And that is why Paul was able to live the way that he did. That's why when we read in Scripture, and Paul, it seems like, is able to live without fear. That's because of that truth. Because Easter means that fear isn't final. Because Easter means that fear is not final. So if Jesus can defeat death, he can defeat the things that we are afraid of too. Fear is only powerful if we convince ourselves that fear is final. But God shows us that he's bigger than those things, right? God shows us that he's bigger than our fears. Now listen, I get it, right? I get it. Even if you believe that fear is not final, it's still going to be there. Because that's what you're thinking, right? It's still going to be there. You're still going to be afraid of things. You're still going to feel anxious about things. There's still going to be stresses about things after graduation, whatever it might be. But here's what this does mean. It does mean that you are better equipped, that you are fully equipped to handle those fears. So if you're a follower of Christ, because he's defeated those fears, you are fully equipped to handle those fears. Romans chapter 8, verse 11 says this. I love this. It says, "If the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ Jesus from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his spirit who dwells in you." So let that verse sink in. Let that sink in a second. What Paul is saying is the same power that defeated death when Jesus rose from the dead, that same power is actually inside of all of those that follow Jesus. You get that? So if you follow Jesus, then that same power that raised him from the dead, that is there in you too. So if we embrace that truth, then man, we can live free from so many of the fears that we face in our lives if we embrace that truth. So let's kind of start to wrap this up with this, give you a little bit of some action things. So ask yourself this question: where has fear been holding you back? Where in your life has fear been holding you back? I got some examples. In your relationships, or dreaming big about the future, Maybe stepping out and doing something you know that you should, but you're too nervous to. Fear stops you from doing that. Or is fear holding you back from actually exploring faith in Jesus? Maybe because you're afraid that you're going to have to give something up, so out of fear you don't actually dive deeper into this Jesus thing. All right, now ask yourself this next question. Think through this. What step should you take to prove that fear doesn't have power over you? So walking away from this video, what steps should you take to prove that fear does not have power over you? So maybe it's forgiving someone. Maybe it's apologizing to someone. Or maybe it's telling your parents something that you've been putting off telling them, but you know you need to. Maybe it's asking your small group leader for help in something that you've been too afraid to admit. Maybe it is picking a new group of friends to hang out with. Whatever it might be, think through that for a second. And when this video is over, take some time to think about that. What steps should you take in your life right now to prove that fear does not have power over you? Because we know it doesn't. Because we have the power that can raise Jesus from the dead. So fear doesn't have any power over us because we have that power in us. So this Easter, no matter which one of those steps or whatever you come up with, whatever it is, you can face fear with confidence. You can face fear with confidence because Jesus has defeated death, and that same power is alive and is in all believers. So you don't have to worry about anything in life, any fear, anything being more powerful than Jesus, because he's already defeated death for you. Let me pray. Father God, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you that we can use avenues like YouTube and Instagram and stuff just to still communicate and still worship and study your word together, God. I pray that as we go through the next couple of weeks, God, I just pray that you would just help these verses to ring true in our lives, God. I pray that as we think to ourselves, as we reflect, as we identify some of those fears, and as we identify some action steps to work against them, God, I pray that you would continuously remind us that we are not on our own in this process. God, that we do not have to be ruled by fear because you have conquered that. You have conquered our fears. You have defeated death, and you have put that power in us, God. So I pray that we're able to realize that. I pray that we're able to use that as we move forward in our lives during these difficult and fearful times. God, we love you so much, and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, well, thank you so much for joining us online, and I look forward to doing this again with you next week. Have a good rest of your week, guys.